There's a 50-50 chance that everything you're experiencing right now, this podcast, your morning coffee, your entire life, is just a vast computer simulation. It might sound crazy, but that's what Elon Musk and a growing number of scientists believe. Welcome to Temporally Scripted. I'm Jack Austin, joined by my good friend Adam Garcia, and we're here to explore the questions that keep you up at night. The ones about reality, consciousness, and what it means to exist in this bizarre universe of ours. Today, we're diving into simulation theory, the idea that our entire universe might be running on someone else's computer. From quantum physics to philosophy, from Plato's cave to Silicon Valley predictions, we're going to explore why some of the world's brightest minds think we might be living in a sophisticated video game. Let's dive into it, Adam. Good to have you here again, mate.
Yeah, likewise. It's nice to be here. So this is a bit of a weird one, really, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. And it's something that crops up again and again in my life, which I guess could be for the fact that we live in a computer simulation.
It could be, or it could be some form of derangement. Who knows?
It could be both, right?
It's good that we're here to find out.
Absolutely, yeah. So Elon Musk believes that there's a 1 in a billion chance that we're not in a simulation. Mm-hmm. That's a strong statement.
I don't know how you could come exactly to that conclusion. You could say that it's likely. You could say that it's a 50-50 chance. To say it's 1 in a billion chance that we're not in base reality, I don't know. It seems like a bit of a stretch. But what is the evidence? What do we know scientifically that would make Elon Musk come to that conclusion?
So there's the 2003 study by Nick Bostrom on simulation, known as the simulation argument. And the evidence that he came up with was that at least one of the 3 statements I'm about to state is true. So the first one is that humanity will not reach technological maturity before extinction, which clearly means we are not in a simulation. Mm-hmm. Or advanced civilizations will choose not to simulate their ancestors, which I would argue in the world we're living now with AI and everything that's going on with VR as well and AR, we're already showing that humans are going to mess with that shit, right? Given an opportunity, is going to be done. And then the third is that we are almost certainly living in a simulation. Now, the logic behind that is if simulations are possible and common, the probability that we're in the base reality is nearly 0.
It could be. So what was the first one? But we would never reach a technical level of
maturity before human extinction. So by technological maturity, it's saying at a level that we could create a simulation that is, I guess, accurate enough and realistic enough for the subjects inside that simulation to not know that they're in a simulation.
Yeah, so in a similar way that when we do various experiments, say with rats or mice, we might be simulating a certain kind of environment or stressor or different things. And so it could be just like that elaborate maze that's been set up. We would do it for ourselves.
Yeah, basically that. And I guess you can even argue around when you're playing something like Grand Theft Auto, do those characters know that they exist or not? Right? Or even The Sims or these kind of games that people play where it's a simulated reality. You have all these characters within that game. Do they think? Do they feel? And even if they do think and feel within the construct of their programming, is that still a form of existence? And therefore, are we already creating simulated realities within our own?
Yeah, sure. Because I've heard this said before as well, where it's like the way video games are evolving, they're getting more and more realistic as time goes on. If we go, okay, in the 80s we had Pong, now we have some crazy game with augmented reality and it's really immersive. And so in a few years, would you be able to tell the difference between playing a video game or not, especially if things like certain drugs to make you feel more involved in the game, or things like neural link, who knows, would we be able to tell the difference whatsoever?
Yeah, and I think that to me shows that we're probably close to, if not already at, technological maturity. But clearly, we have not created any such realities where it's the same level of operational capability of human beings and the human mind. But so there's still an open argument, right? There's no, yes, we definitely are smart enough and technologically advanced enough to do this. We have recently had the first truly quantum computer as well, the chip that Google released recently. So Google released a chip recently that could process one of the testing problems that they use for supercomputers. And what took before the chip, what would have taken the fastest supercomputer on the planet 8 heptillion years to solve, which is older than the universe as we know it, or at least what we're aware of, way older, in 5 minutes.
Wow.
So that
I didn't know about that. That is absolutely insane. Because one of the questions that I would have about whether it's a simulation that we live in, you'd need a lot of computing power to do it, because if it's basically simulating an entire universe full of people and their individual points of view and things like that. Okay, say in a video game, it only generates the area of the game that's needed. So that would cut down on it, but still to have a processing power to make a universe, that's quite a lot.
yeah, the server space alone is something that's quite insane. The question with Google is they've announced this, but whether or not it's been seen and used in the public domain remains to be seen. And as someone who's tried to set up an email address for our podcast through Google on 3 separate occasions in the last 2 weeks and failed every single time, they don't have a capability to let me put 2 pictures of a credit card in because now the number and the name are on different sides.
Oh, nice.
Maybe it's because they've been spending all of their time and energy on quantum computing. And is it qubits? Is that what they call it?
Yeah.
It exists. So before it didn't exist and now it does, which is insane.
Yeah, and so we can do these complex equations in seconds or minutes, but setting up an email account, that's not so easy.
No.
Just distracted, messing with the quantum computer.
Yeah. And when you get an email back from them, it says that it may take longer than usual because of COVID and their staffing issues as a result of COVID, which...
Oh, that thing from years ago.
which they've clearly not updated for the last 2.5 years.
Like, if it wasn't for 9/11, things would be different. Your email would be set up and everything would be fine.
Yeah, if it wasn't for the way that you're perceiving your individual simulation, then it would be better. So really, it's your fault. But yeah, I think that goes into what point 1 was in terms of humanity not reaching technological maturity before extinction in Bostrom's argument. But point 2 was that advanced civilizations, which... debatable whether we are one or not. I would say we are.
Yeah, but there's that thing, isn't there, I've heard people like Michio Kaku talk about it, where it's like different levels of civilization, and it's how much energy you could extract from your planet and surroundings or galaxy. And I think it goes up to 4, and we're not actually even at level 1.
Right.
On a bigger scale. We don't have things like Dyson spheres that are taking all of the energy that we need from an individual star. We don't have anything like that. We haven't even found a way to do that really with our planet, and so that would put us like not even at level 1 kind of thing,
which is crazy. But then that kind of brings me to the point of maybe the advanced civilizations were the civilizations before us, such as the ancient Egyptians or the Mayans or even the whole Atlantis sort of crew, which I can't actually remember what ancient civilization that was. But we see all of these crazy things like the pyramids, for example, and I don't think we had the wheel, did we, at the point when the pyramids were supposedly
No. So there was
built?
no wheel. There was no real geometry or anything like that either, apparently. Just some guys who were doing a bit of hunting and gathering in the Stone Age, and they just got a bit bored on the weekend and thought, let's just cut up some rocks, millions of them, and just stack them into a pyramid.
Yeah.
It'll be a good laugh. There's nothing else to do.
Yeah, we've already had 3 kids in the last 2 years, so we're going to go build this pyramid for a bit, Liv.
Yeah,
Give you a rest.
If I stay indoors, my wife's just going to give me a load of crap anyway because I haven't been doing things around the house. I may as well make some megalithic structures, and for some of it, I'll get huge 500-ton granite blocks from 500 miles away, and yes, no technology, no wheel.
Yeah, and presumably they were transporting them using like triangular objects because they were very fond of that particular shape.
Probably, yeah. Dinner plates and everything from that era. It's quite interesting.
Yeah, so I think the question in my head, it's almost a certainty, and I know a lot of people will probably argue with that, but they would have had some kind of technology that we don't have today to build those things.
Just on a very different level, there's so many artifacts from ancient Egypt that are, beyond belief. And not even the big stuff, some of the like really small things where it's like vases made out of various types of granite and things like that, but it looks like they've been turned like on a lathe. And then you measure them, excuse me, and all the measurements are really precise, all the ratios, how like the thickness all around the edges, and it's like we would really struggle to make something like that today.
Yeah, and then people lead you to believe that maybe it was because they had more time on their hands or something like that.
Yeah, so with those like vases, I've heard some archaeologists say they got a stick with a really hard rock on the end and they just started going deeper and deeper down. It would take one guy like a lifetime to do it. It's no way.
And in fact, a lot of those structures predate the civilizations that were around them and worshipped them as well. Like I know a lot of those ancient Egyptian pyramids, which are the most well known, I would say, tend to predate that as well, which also then indicates a potential advanced civilization way beyond us.
Because the interesting thing with the ancient Egypt thing as well, it's usually civilizations get more technologically advanced over time. But with ancient Egypt, it seems like all of the good stuff was done at the start, and it just generally went downhill from there. So that's really strange as well. You'd think, I've started building pyramids, I'll get better at it. But instead, they didn't.
Progressively worse, either that some knowledge has been hidden or there's something that's not quite adding up about what we've been told by those people. Yeah.
And it's hard to tell when things are 4,000 years ago, potentially more, what actually went on.
And then, so imagine we're part of this super advanced simulation. Oh, that was a Freudian slip. Imagine we're ancestors with, I guess, probably some kind of power to use electromagnetism or something like that, I would guess, to move things and to do stuff, but who knows? And we're there and we've got the ability to recreate a version of ourselves, maybe just to see what happens if things go down a certain route, or maybe even to allow experiences that aren't necessarily being experienced in one plane, or who knows.
Mm-hmm.
Would we choose to?
I don't know. Is the answer. It seems like right now we're trying to make things like video games and different experiences that are simulations in a way. So it seems like it's in our nature to do that. So if we had humanity on a few different timelines, how many of those timelines as a percentage would choose to make simulations?
Yeah, and I feel like it's a natural evolution of humanity to, once we make ourselves safe and we've got enough food and enough water and all of the other things that are involved in that kind of hierarchy of needs that humans have, you naturally then come to a point of entertainment, right? And
what entertainment would you choose?
Yeah, watching a version of us struggle for fun and then messing. We've all played The Sims, right? And the amount of times I know I've played The Sims when I was younger, and I would sometimes build 4 walls round one of the Sims to watch them go insane and crap themselves and whatever. do you know what I mean?
Sounds like a good game. I should get it.
Yeah, or you can like box in one of the children so that the social services can't come and take them away, and if you leave them not going to the toilet for long enough, they wet themselves, and you can start fires in the house, and you name it, right?
Sounds really wholesome.
Oh yeah, wholesome fun
for everybody, really.
For all the family. And then you also have these games like Sim City and stuff where you can build a city right down from the water supply, the transport systems, the buildings, and then you can send natural disasters into that city just to see what happens.
Yeah, so just like we could have had ancient civilizations here that were decimated by comet strike, coronal mass ejection, whatever else, really.
Yeah, exactly.
With that thread that you were on, Alan Watts had this thing, I can't remember it exactly, but it's something like, imagine if you could go to sleep and dream any dream, and within that dream, you could dream for 75 years. Maybe you could have dreams within that dream. At first, you'd go, okay, I'll just dream the best things ever. And you'd have this amazing time with all these wild and amazing experiences. Then you'd get bored after a while. And then you'd go, how about I just do it on bad experiences as well? And then after a while, you'd go, actually, how about I just relinquish control of it? And if that happened in enough time, you dream exactly the position you're in now.
Which is pretty profound.
Yeah, it's cool.
And to me also goes, hey, that means we probably live in some form of simulation.
And I was thinking of my friend the other day, and he called just at the same time. It must be real. Not real.
or real what? Does it make any difference either way? And I think it leads us nicely into the third statement, right? So the third statement is this: we are almost certainly living in a simulation right now. Bold statement. What evidence is there to suggest that is the case, and in the worlds that we've lived and what we've experienced? Because I've got a few things that I could drop in there.
I guess it could be lots of things, because there's lots of strange things around us. So it's like you could go, okay, it just so happens that the Earth is perfectly positioned at the distance that it is from the sun. The field around the Earth lets just enough electromagnetism so we can live, and for DNA to change and evolve into different creatures, but at the same time it blocks a lot of the bad stuff out. And that's handy. The moon's just the right distance away, and it's like all the conditions are perfect for humans to exist. But then in an infinite universe, there would be somewhere like that.
Yeah, it's back to that. The most interesting topics, they tend to be these sort of double-edged swords, where when you follow the argument all the way around in one direction, you end up back in the same place.
Yeah.
And it's like one of those things. I think one of the arguments that people talk about a lot, and it's, now I think about it, it's not something I've experienced for a long time, but I used to get it often, and that is déjà vu.
Yeah, same. Used to get it a lot. Haven't for a little while, but yeah.
Which is a weird thing. Now, obviously, the science says behind that your brain has seen it, the situation, and it's just processing and slightly delayed, basically. So you see it, your brain processes it a little bit late, and then it looks like you've already seen it. But I guess for me, that's always a strange one, and how that makes sense, because how do you remember it if your brain didn't process it? It's like chicken and egg thing, you know?
It's like there's been some time travel within your brain or something like that.
Yeah. And there's also that phenomenon of when you, I'm proud of myself for getting that word right in one go there. That was good. I don't think I'd be able to do that twice. Oh no, I'm gonna have to say it again now. But there's that part of it where when you notice deja vu, if you just let it play out, it follows exactly what you think you remembered. But if you interrupt it or say to the person, oh, that's deja vu, it like snaps you out of whatever path that was, if that makes sense. And I don't know if you've ever experienced
so
that.
what, it would change the direction that life was going on your
Yeah, or
timeline?
just change, what I remembered that moment as in the deja vu.
Oh, okay. So snap you out of it and go, oh, okay, it wasn't deja vu.
Yeah, because then it's like a different outcome. It's someone's going to say something in a minute or something's going to happen. And if you just let it play out, that is what happens. But if you go, hey, whoa, deja vu, everyone looks at you like, oh, yeah. And it sort of, it sort of kills the whatever it was that you were seeing, which is very strange.
That is very strange. Yeah, I don't know. It's a tricky one. Have you ever had anything outside of that where it's been like a premonition?
I feel like I have memories of dreaming things and then those things happening in some kind of similar way, for sure. Like I know I've woken up and been like, wait, hold on. I dreamt about this last night.
Yeah.
So yes. And again, I would say it's one of those things where if you wake up and tell someone you had a dream about this thing, then it probably won't happen.
Yeah, and because there'd be so many dreams as well that you'd have to tell people or write down. Again, with that boost the odds of that actually happening. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Because you're looking out for it. And then it's also how much you remember as a human. So obviously when we're looking around a room or around a place, your brain is only really picking up like this bit in the middle. It's only focusing on that section. Everything else, if you're in a place that's familiar to you, your brain is just using images from memory to piece out this information. And then I'm sure you've had the situation where you remember something one way. Maybe you thought you said something last week or 2 weeks ago, but one of your friends will be like, no, I said that. And both of you genuinely believe that you said it. So just to circle that back to my point is maybe when you see the thing in the premonition, you just invent that you had a dream about it. And maybe that's not accurate.
It could be. So it's almost like the opposite to, have you heard of the Mandela effect?
Yes.
And similar to what you were just saying about memories that you and your friend had and things like that. The Mandela effect is that a huge percentage of the population believe that Nelson Mandela died in jail, but he didn't. He was released from jail. He became president of South Africa, all this kind of thing. It's similar things with the Monopoly guy wears a monocle. No, he doesn't, but everyone remembers it that way. And there's all these different things, like the Flintstones actually has 2 T's in it. And there's loads of like logos, endings of movies. What does Darth Vader say?
That was on the tip of my tongue. Yeah. So Luke, I am your father, but he doesn't actually say that. He just says, I am your father, right?
Yeah. So that's a little bit like that, because the human brain as well, it isn't infallible, and over time, memories are a really tricky thing, and that's why eyewitness testimony is one of the least reliable forms of testimony. Unfortunately, but for us, everything's real, and we remember everything in this way. But it's like it might not be. So in a way, we are living in a simulation anyway of what our brains remember.
Yeah, I totally get that. It's one of the things that stopped me having more arguments that are pointless, because now when somebody says to me, oh, this is what happened, I just don't get into it, because I know that they probably think that is what happened. And I also know that I might be wrong as well, right? I might be sitting thinking, oh, I definitely said that, it was my idea, but there's every much as chance that I'm wrong that the other person is as well. So I
it's
just,
interesting.
when they come up, I'm like, okay, that's cool. Maybe you're right, maybe you're wrong. It's better not digging into it. But yeah, the human mind is certainly not infallible, and a lot of these things could be a result of those kind of mishaps, mistakes, and whatever.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Yeah, it brings me to certain psychedelic experiences that I've had in the past, and one of those stories is where you have the feeling when you're tripping on mushrooms or acid that you are the only real person in reality, and that everybody else
Yeah.
is fake or a figment of your imagination. And even to the point that you can trick your brain where you see people like, I think he's figured out that like we're all fake and he's the only real one. And again, that is a bizarre and harrowing experience to go through.
Yeah, I remember having one or two experiences like that. Or one I remember just everything went silent, and it's like everything had just gone. And I was the only one left there just but that's the thing, it's when we say we live in a simulation, who's this we? Why would it be a multiplayer game?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And when you start to think about that, that genuinely makes me feel uneasy.
Yeah, it made me feel uneasy. I thought about it quite a lot for a little while, and I was like, this is not good.
It's a rabbit hole. It's like pulling on that thread in a jumper and it just keeps coming out. And you're like, oh no, I wish I'd not
Yeah.
started pulling on this thread, which is weird. But it's also then brings the question of, does it really matter either way? Because if you are the only one and it is your simulation and your creation, then giving up and not doing anything is one option. But then your experience is, but then your experience is going to be shitty, or just go all in the same way as though it's not a simulation. And then what do you lose? It's like this weird thing about the human mind where you don't want to be tricked. So you're like, oh, if it's a simulation, I'm just going to give up on it because I don't want to be tricked. So the end, you're going to be like, it was a simulation. All of that stuff you cared about is just not real. But
then you wake up in some TV studio in, I don't know, the year
Japan.
4085.
There's some planet it's like a giant Japan. You wake up in the fetal position and there's just loads of people laughing at you.
Yeah, and it was just one of those dodgy TV game shows that you signed up for to see if you could survive.
I want to go in again.
The thing is, though, as well, to me, the idea of a simulated reality, is it that different from religions of the past?
This is it. And is that where a lot of this comes from? And this idea of us being in a simulation, and almost this thing that's dialed into our minds that the reality is created. Because, yeah, as you say, if the Bible is true and God created the world in 7 days, right? Then that is a simulation, isn't it? Because it's a simulation created by the creator itself.
Yeah, good work ethic. 7 days, pretty good going. Yeah, it's not like builders in the UK or anything like that.
He didn't spend much time sucking his teeth and making brews and
smoking roll-ups, pointing.
Oh yeah, I'd never have built it like that myself. I don't know what the architect was thinking with this one, to be honest.
I know better.
Yeah, who put that snake in there?
Yeah, that's could do a whole religion argument at another time. But the whole thing, it is very similar to that idea of, like you said, if we think that God created the world and the universe in 7 days and all this kind of thing, that is a simulated reality that someone created.
As much as it possibly can be, right? And I think there's other phenomena like the whole observer effect and pixelation, which is an episode in itself. But the fact that things change and react and move when you observe them is also a fairly large indicator that we're in a simulation, whether or not it's almost like your brain is a simulation projector. and creates your own experience.
Yes, it's almost, it acts as a wave and keeps it vague and things like that until you need to really look at it, and then it's a particle.
Yeah, yeah, and that kind of makes sense to how you experience life and go through life, because if you wake up and you're like, weather's shit today, it's freezing. I bet it's going to be really busy everywhere. There's going to be loads of idiots on the road today. There's no doubt about it. And you go out, get in the car or whatever, and there's loads of idiots on the road and the traffic's terrible. And then you like get out and stand in a puddle and get your shoes wet or whatever. And you're like, fuck this. Everything's a nightmare. I hate this shit. And you just then experience more things to get angry and annoyed and irritated about. So then if you put yourself in a situation where you're quite happy going through things and your projector, so to speak, is that everything's good and you're blessed and privileged to have the things that you have, then everything feels better and more privileged and like it's something good to have.
And so I guess by that you're saying that whether it's a simulation or not, you just have to carry on through it and with a positive outlook and maybe some gratitude and things like that.
Yeah, because I feel like if it is a simulation, then anything is possible to create and move in that game, right? And you're going to be unlocking levels as you're going through that stuff, which means if you start learning something or focusing on something and believing it to be true, there's a likelihood that it will become true. And I know what you said earlier about if you lived an endless number of lives, eventually, and you could pick every time what you did, eventually you just end up in this life we're in now. But I feel like I'm at a point where I want a Ferrari. And therefore, if we live in a simulation, I want to play that game so I can have that Ferrari.
Okay, good times. I guess you may as well in some ways. What if it is a computer game, or what if it is like old-fashioned religions? And the idea is while you're here, you've got to prove yourself in a certain way to show that you're ready to see base reality or ready to leave the simulation and go into base reality. Kind of in a religion, going to heaven or something like that.
Yeah, I think a lot of how the society in the world is built in terms of the media that we get shown, the fact that people find it more strange to see sex in a movie than they do violence. There's a lot of very unusual and twisted things going on in the world, and there always has been, of course, but there are a lot of these things that we now experience day to day which seem to be pushing us to be less grateful for what we have and to be quite miserable and always wanting more. And I'm saying that after I said I want a Ferrari, but I don't feel like life's rubbish because I don't have one. There are an awful lot of things to be thankful for, and I feel like the narrative of the world is to make us feel like everything's not good and not enjoyable. And to me, that does lead into trying to stray us off the path of what really does matter in life. And I personally believe that the purpose of the game, the simulation, the universe, whatever, is love, basically. And what we're here to do is to love and to experience that feeling. And it's probably the most powerful feeling that there is. But with that, obviously, comes the feeling of loss and having to let go and going through all these other experiences, because you can live in a box and not socialize and not get close and open up to people. But if you do that, you never really experience losing people and all of that side of life. So it's, if you love this much and everyone, you have a big circle of friends, family, you share really deeply with them, as those people are taken from you as you go through life, you're going to experience a lot of pain and a lot of trauma as well.
Yeah, which I guess is necessary in itself. It's like that thing, how do you know what cold is if you don't know what hot is?
Yeah.
How do you know what complete feelings of happiness are unless you've had feelings of absolute sadness and loss.
Yeah, and it's almost as the deeper you go into one, the more you can have the opposite feeling to that, and I feel like that is a key part of our existence. And again, that's every action has an opposite and equal reaction, right? Which again is weird.
Yeah, a lot of things, like we were saying before, are weird. We have universal constants, the speed of light, Planck constant, different things like that. We have the golden ratio and Fibonacci numbers that seem to spring up in everything, almost as if there's a code underlying everything.
Yes. Yeah, and things like Mandelbrot as well. Have you heard of Mandelbrot?
The fractal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's something I don't massively understand, apart from being high and watching the videos of it zooming in on stuff and being
That's
like,
amazing.
"Whoa, dude, that's awesome." But as I understand it, it's like a way of plotting numbers, and all of the numbers either go off to infinity or they go back and come back to zero. And I believe then it's plotted based on the colors are based on whatever pattern it followed, essentially.
Interesting.
But if you look at that, it is infinite, and it's an infinite pattern that just goes on forever and ever, but it is a pattern. And again, it's like, why is it that nature just follows that pattern because that's what survives and that's the way things are? But even if it is the case, then why?
And it's interesting that, say with like golden ratio or like Fibonacci and things like that, you'd have things that appear in the arms of like spiral galaxies in the same way that they would appear in a seashell or a flower or a pine cone or different, all these different things. And it's like, interesting. So it's
it brings me back to a thought that I've pondered and contemplated on quite a bit in the past, which is this: if you zoom in on anything in the world, anything, and you keep going micro and you just keep zooming, it never ends. The detail will just change, right? But the view will just keep going forever. And the same if you go out that way as well. Everything's just going to keep changing and morphing and being a different view of things. And to me, that's just totally mind-blowing. I don't even know where to begin with it.
Yeah, it is really crazy, isn't it? Is it at the end of, is it like Men in Black or something like that, or some movie where it's like the end credits like zooms out, and so you see the solar system, the galaxy, the universe, and then the universe, I can't remember what it is, but it's some little bubble in like a glass, or it's like a ball on a pool table or something ridiculous.
It
like
keeps
that.
going out and out. Yeah. And eventually then there's like some chewing gum on someone's shoe or something like that.
Which it all could be. That's the sort of nature of infinity.
I suppose all of the tiny little microorganisms that are inside humans, they see us as their universe and their world and where they live, and they have an impact on what we experience and feel and what we want to put in our bodies and all of this stuff, because obviously it's an ecosystem for them as well.
Yeah, and they only sense so much of their world, the same as we only sense so much of our world. We only see a very small part of the whole spectrum of light. We don't have cryptochrones like some animals that can see the magnetic poles and things like that, the magnetic forces of the earth. There's all kinds of things that we can't figure through our senses. And so when we think of infinity, we're only thinking generally in how it looks or sounds to our senses. But it goes out so much more than that.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
It's the same if you go down to something, and I'm sure I heard this before, but it might be one of those things. Sometimes you heard something in the playground when you were 5 and you've never heard anyone else talk about it, then therefore haven't updated your view of things. Yeah, but
it seems like a good way to live life.
This is a fact. And then you're like, wait, where did I hear this? Oh, yeah, it was on the playground when I was like 7. Maybe that's not accurate. I should fact check myself. But is it like ants don't experience humans as things as living things because we're just too big for them to even contemplate. Like we're seen as just things, like objects.
Oh, maybe. I don't know. Because an individual ant, I guess it just reacts to stuff.
Yeah.
And perhaps the humans wouldn't be so important because the humans generally wouldn't be a direct threat to them.
Tell that to the 8-year-old version of me.
I guess they learned the lesson.
I've certainly been guilty of an ant genocide or 5.
Oh, I definitely have as well. Lived in a lot of countries with ants, and you just got to get rid of them sometimes.
Deodorant can and a lighter.
I wondered why you had all them burn marks around your house.
Funny. Yeah, I know. It's just giving me flashback to being 8 when you having a war with like ants in the garden or whatever. You're like, die. Is that just me?
Oh, you'd find like different bugs and put them together and see what happens. Yeah.
There we go. Coming back into how humans would probably have a simulation to see, well, I wonder what happens if we put the Houthis and these next to each other, and then let's just drop Israel in the middle of it and see what happens, and let's back them by America, and who knows, it'll be wild.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe it is like that. It's like going, okay, if there was like, if you could go to the zoo and throw some guns into the monkey enclosure, would it be funny? There's something about a monkey shooting a gun I would find hilarious.
Would they be smoking as well? That's
probably, yeah.
What's going to kill him first, cancer or bullets?
Science has fallen way behind. There's some experiments that are just screaming to be done, really. But yeah, so it's a joke, but I know there's people that would want to see that.
We already have it with people that want to watch television series like Squid Games and stuff, which is literally about people getting murdered playing games by psychopaths. Or I've never really understood it. I don't know about you. Films like Saw, where, as I understand it, I saw a bit of one of them.
Oh, yeah.
They like have to cut a key out of their own stomach to unlock a lock to get out of a room. And it's all of these sick, twisted, like horrible things that people love to watch. And if you look at Netflix now, it's literally, here's the life story of this serial killer. This is what he did with the bodies. This was his motivation. And people lap it up.
Yeah, there does seem to be a lot of that. Yeah, I can't remember who it was I was watching. I think it was like a Huberman podcast, and he was talking to a guest about a similar kind of thing where it's always a new series about Jeffrey Dahmer or whatever. And he's like, I saw the trailer and then I thought, why would I want to watch that? Why do I want that in my head?
Yeah. Does his family get royalties from it and stuff? Are they earning off the fact that, or is it just Netflix that makes all the money from glorifying serial killers?
What a business to be in as well. It's imagine going, I don't know, bank manager or something like that. I've got an idea for a business. Interesting. Like, I was thinking of just glorifying some serial killers, making a lot of money from it. What do you think? Does that sound good? It doesn't sound so great on paper.
Yeah. People get all offended if you're in the living room and you pull up Pornhub and start watching that on a Sunday afternoon. Pull up Netflix
with its double standards all the way through.
Yeah, with its sinister red and black branding and N that looks like painted on the wall, and then it pops up with all of these like weird, snuff movies, basically. Like, here's how to kill a person in 75 different ways. Oh, lovely. Yeah, let's watch Schindler's List and have a right laugh. It'd be great.
It does actually look a little bit imposing and weird, the sort of Netflix. And everyone knows what it is, but it's like,
it makes this noise and then it's dung and you get the N, and then it's literally horrible things. Mostly it's either garbage or horrible murder related stuff.
I guess the only thing that they have done is they started doing a lot of like comedy specials and things like that. So a lot of people did like the Netflix comedy special, which is good. You need a laugh in between watching I don't know, heads get severed or whatever.
Yeah, I have to say so. I noticed they've got these fireplaces at the moment that are themed by TV series, which must be for the festive period that's just past us.
Mhm.
And yeah, one of them is a Squid Games fireplace. So you can be nicely unwrapping the presents with your kids around the tree, Squid Games on in the background. It sounds idyllic.
Perfect. What could be better and more wholesome?
Yeah, exactly. If that is part of a simulation and a creation, then it's interesting. I guess
Hmm.
another interesting topic here is if we're in a simulation, is it of our creating or is it of someone else's creation? Is it coming out of your own brain? Or is it likely that it's, like you said earlier, is it going to be a we or is it just a me?
Yeah, also, on top of that, was it like Drake's equation that said about, okay, we have so many different stars in every galaxy and so many different, so somewhere in our own galaxy there must be life somewhere, and definitely outside of it. Then you have the kind of like Fermi paradox, which is if there's life all the way through the universe, where is everyone? Why can't we detect them? Why haven't we seen anything? And is that partly because it is a simulation done by something else that isn't even human?
Yeah, and it's then, is it the simulation in a Truman Show sense? Or a simulation in a much more deeper psychological, inside your very mind and projection of what you sense? It's interesting. And it's like we said earlier, touching on like the psychological impacts of believing in a simulation theory, and you've been down that rabbit hole as well. It can give you existential dread, feeling like things aren't real, but it's also got a huge potential for empowering if you look at it in a more positive light, which then comes back to like law of attraction and all of these other things that, as we've discussed before, and I'm sure we'll go into at
Mm-hmm.
some point, I'm a big believer in these kind of things.
Yeah, there's a lot there, really.
I'm good at
Yeah.
doing like 20 layered questions, so we have to get used to unpacking. Here's a question with 25 layers in it.
So
Off you
yeah,
go, Adam.
okay. So let's rewind a little bit. So yeah, if it's a simulation, in some ways, is it absolutely terrifying, or is it like it's not too bad? It's just a simulation. Nothing really matters. But then, if you die in the simulation, do you die in real life? Are you even real? Are you just a collection of photons and electricity that's just been put here? Are you just an NPC in a game? I don't know if any of it's like reassuring or terrifying in some ways.
Yeah, it's like when people say, are we infinite or do we die? And when you die, that's it and it's over. To me, and it's something I've contemplated again on hallucinogenic drugs, both are, I'm not sure which is more terrifying. I'm not sure if just dying and that being it and it's okay, done now, or no, there is no release and this will just continue forever and ever.
Yeah, and like reincarnation is just like being respawned in a game.
Yeah, and will you then experience every other perspective that there is on the planet, or will it always be a slightly different version of? And again, that rabbit hole is like, it can be quite terrifying when you think about it. But I'm also then reassured by love and looking at life in a positive way and trying to enjoy and make the most of it because you
Like
feel that.
putting on a Sunday afternoon around the family.
Instead of Netflix, yeah. It is. It's definitely an interesting one. So I think we're about looking ahead to what we've got to come in the next episodes. But today, I think, regardless of whether we're in a simulation or not, the implications of it all are fascinating.
Absolutely.
And whether it's all the computational kind of theory that we've discussed, or if that is just our way of understanding consciousness, when it comes down to it all, even if this is all just code running on some advanced computer, our experiences and our relationships and choices still matter because they're real to us. And maybe that's the only reality we need to worry about.
Yeah, I would agree. And there's no real way to find out. I guess you find out one day
Or not.
when the lights go off, or you won't.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
you'll restart again. But yeah, I think the only thing to do is just carry on as if everything is real and everything is as important as it seems, or as it
Totally.
feels to be, rather
Yeah.
than just next time someone annoys you, just going, "It'd be better if they didn't exist." It's only a simulation anyway.
And star in your own Netflix documentary of the future. Yeah,
At least you can
totally.
get some royalties further down the line.
Yeah, this is it. So next week, we're going to be talking about someone who's convinced we're living in a simulation, Elon Musk, that we mentioned at the beginning. And we're going to examine his rise to power, his influence on technology and society, and try to figure out if he's shaping humanity's future for better or worse. So I'm looking forward to that. And if you've ever experienced something that made you question reality, share your glitch with us or your Matrix moments on Twitter. We're at Temporally Scripted. Or you can check out the show notes on our website for links to the research and topics we've discussed today. And thank you very much for joining us. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, send us an email. Actually, don't send us an email. We
haven't managed to
Google
set that up.
issues.
Yeah, we'll talk to them when they're finished with their quantum computing.
Good. Sounds like a plan.
Until next time.